Some classical musicians become so famous that even after they die, their music is almost universally recognizable. You might not know the composer's name or face, but you would probably recognize one of their songs. Something like,
Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah.
Or maybe you'd recognize this one. Or something like, wait, not sure who that guy is? You're not alone. Even though he achieved a great deal of fame during his life, this composer has largely been forgotten by even the most die-hard classical music fans. So who was this guy?
Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
Don't you mean Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the poet?
No. Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
Named after the poet of almost the same name, was born in London in 1875 to an English woman, Alice Hare Martin, and a doctor, Daniel Peter Hughes Taylor from Sierra Leone. His grandfather decided to give him violin lessons at a young age, and it went something like this. I guess people thought he was pretty good, because by age 15 he began studying at the Royal College of Music. You know, no big deal.
You got into
The Royal College of Music?
What, like it's hard?
Pretty soon, he decided to follow his passion and began studying composition under Sir Charles Villiers Stanford. You know, just one of the most famous English composers of all time. No big deal. Again. At the age where many of us premiered Crippling Self-Doubt,
Samuel Coleridge Taylor
premiered his most popular work, Hiawatha's Wedding Feast. Here's a short sample of one of the movements. The performance was met with immediate and widespread praise. The publishing company Novello, keep an eye on them, even commissions him to write a sequel before the work is premiered. Not quite sure how that one works. Time travel, maybe?
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
In attendance at the premiere of this work were legendary composers Arthur Sullivan and Hubert Parry. In his journal later that night, Sullivan had this to say about his experience at the premiere.
I went to the Royal College of Music's concert to hear Coleridge Taylor's Hiawatha. Much impressed by the lad's genius. He is a composer, and not a music maker. The music is fresh and original. He has melody and harmony in abundance. And his scoring is brilliant and full of color. At times luscious, rich, and sensual. The work was very well done.
And Hubert Parry had this to say. Hiawatha
It is the best thing that has ever happened to me.
The piece is so successful that he takes it on tour to the United States.
1,
And then he does it again.
2,
And again.
3,
But just 3 times.
3.
During one of these tours, he's honored by President Theodore Roosevelt in the White House. As a side note, our composer seems to be drawing the attention of a very specific type. Joking aside, Take note of the date and remember that the 1900s would have been closer to the Civil War than we are now to the Civil Rights Movement. Having a black composer honored in the White House was no small feat given the intense racial tensions in the country at that time. During his life, Hiawatha's Wedding Feast went on to sell hundreds of thousands of copies. And remember those guys from the beginning of the video? In the 1900s in England, Hiawatha's Wedding Feast was the third most popular work, competing with Handel's Messiah and Mendelssohn's Elijah. We easily recognize Handel and Mendelssohn, but we should also recognize
Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
While in the US, he took an increased interest in his paternal heritage and went on to become the youngest delegate at the first Pan-African Conference. Those who attended the conference, such as W.E.B. Du Bois, laid the foundation for what eventually became the Civil Rights Movement in America. So, it sounds like
Samuel Coleridge Taylor
was a pretty awesome guy and wrote really good music. So why don't we talk about him much?
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Part of it has to do with money. We tend to assume nowadays that if a piece of music is popular, the composer's making a lot of money off of it. And while that does happen nowadays, it only happens because our man got completely ripped off. Despite his extreme skill and talent,
Samuel Coleridge Taylor
fulfilled his destiny as a musician by being really, really poor.
You guys are getting paid?
Remember our good friend Novello? In the stress of his financial situation, he sold the copyright for Hiawatha to Novello for only 15 guineas, a form of currency that looks like this. Wait, hold on. There we go. Which, if you do the quick math, 15 guineas comes out to about $30. Even worse, that's 30 Canadian dollars. And even though his piece sold hundreds of thousands of copies, because there were no laws at the time to provide him royalties, he never saw a cent past the original transaction.
I have done nothing wrong, ever, in my life. Money, please! My money.
Another reason we might not talk much about
Samuel Coleridge Taylor
maybe because of accidental or maybe purposeful racial prejudices when constructing historical narratives. As we are still dealing with racism as a country, it isn't hard to imagine that bias plays a part in the formation of what we lovingly call the dead white guys canon. Which sounds like a pretty sick band name, to be honest. It also turns out that dying of tuberculosis at age 37 is not very conducive to building one's international reputation. And though, like Johann Sebastian Bach, he fell into brief obscurity, many scholars hope that, like Bach, he will rise like a mighty phoenix
and take his rightful place of Lord of this realm.
or, maybe just make it into the Norton anthology or something.